Any questions?
I'm just wondering why you agreed to participate in the film, what you expected from it, and what you thought of the result.
Could you?
Why you agreed, what you expected from the film, and what did you think of it?
Three different questions. First, as they can testify, I was against the film. I was very reluctant at the beginning, very reluctant, and I said no. Then there was some misunderstanding, and the no became yes. So,
translation.
So then it took years, and I was constantly, as you can also testify, I was constantly nervous, really reluctant, except for some moments when we were like, when I just forgot there was some shooting going on. Okay. And the last question is the most difficult. I love the film. Okay. What can I say? I know, given the lot of footage they have, another film would have been possible. Perhaps a totally different film. Perhaps a better one, I don't know. Perhaps worse, I don't know. This is, my feeling is that it's done now. Now it's done, it's irreversible. And I'm happy that it's been done. Okay, and let me put it that way, because I don't want simply to make compliments and to say I love the film. I don't know. It would like it, if I were here to say I love the film, I would be ridiculous because it's me. Okay? So I won't say I love the film. Narcissism is the subject. Is one of the subjects. So I will let Narcissus loves the film. No, I can't say this. The only thing I can say that I was very anxious about the result during the years and years, and I have been reassured, let's say, to a large extent by what I saw. Let me put it that way.
Very nice. Thank you.
Back here.
I have a question about the editing process. This film is very lyrical, and there are very specific things you've chosen to get us to know Mr. Derrida and his philosophy. I'm wondering how long the editing process was and how much you sort of knew about the form the film would take going into it, and how much of it evolved over the period of time that you were working on it.
Well, it definitely evolved. I mean, one of the reasons that I think for both of us that we chose to undertake the film was the challenge, in some ways the seeming impossibility of working with his thought in a cinematic form. So and obviously this is not something that suggests itself immediately. So one of the beauties of making a documentary is that it gives you a long kind of writing process, a long opportunity to rewrite and rewrite. And actually the form itself, which is, I think at this point I would describe as episodic, a great use of a lot of excerpts of his work, was only realized right near the very end of the film.
Yeah, and just the only little short thing I'd add to that is, it was very much we would shoot, we'd edit, we'd shoot, we'd edit. So everything always informed. You know, the next interview, Jacques wouldn't know why we were showing up again, but it was informed by what we discovered in the editing process or what new tack we were trying to take. But what was interesting or challenging about the film was that there was no model. You know, you couldn't look up, oh, let's see what they did with Freud, or oh, Nietzsche's got a great one. You know, so it took a long time and really, you know, tried Jacques' patience at times, but he had the faith to keep going.
Okay, next. You?
I was wondering, did you ask them to take anything out of the film that was in any of the rough cuts? And if so, what was it?
Not that I remember. Of course, there was a contract. There was a contract, written or not written, there was a contract between us. Of course, I would give the authorization once I would have seen the film, which didn't mean that I would participate in the editing, nothing. But I wouldn't let the film become public before I see it. That was part of the contract. And I never asked for anything, except one, I remember. I never asked for anything, any change, anything to be removed. I did not intervene at all, except if I remember correctly. Once I told you Marguerite is shown too often in the kitchen, my wife, and she's a psychoanalyst. She's not. I'm more at home than she is. Okay, so the image of Marguerite too often in the kitchen would have been misleading and true and unfair. So I asked you to just change something about this. That's the only intervention that I can remember. Is that true? Is that
Yogurt. The yogurt.
the yogurt?
There's a scene with you eating the yogurt.
The yogurt. Oh God. Of course, I had a problem with my breakfast, and I forgot that I asked you to remove the yogurt, famous yogurt scenario. I just forgot.
The DVD.
That's for the DVD.
In front here.
Curious as to why Amy chose to use her own voice in reading of the text in the film.
That was something Kirby and I struggled with a long time, and every time we tried it in screenings in LA, people said, "Get an actor, Amy, do yourself a favor." But we finally ultimately thought that it would make some sort of statement, since the film's about translation and about sort of an Echo and Narcissus relationship to Jacques and his work that the filmmakers have, that actually it would add another layer if it was my voice. So it would sort of call attention to the filmmaking process, to the filmmaker-subject relationship, to interpretation, to translation, to purposely doing the text in English rather than French with the subtitles. So it was all these different considerations. That's basically why we ended up doing it that way.
Right. I mean, we didn't want to completely efface the filmmaker in the film, so we chose to put Amy as a character in the film, and we chose to use her sort of on the margins, which is why you see her hair shot from the back. But Derrida, Jacques is responding to someone, and I think it's important to have that as part of kind of the documentary process and documentary record.
You talked about the always already a little bit in the film, and I wonder if you could talk about what contemporary works you think most invite or sort of demand, perhaps contain, a deconstructionist reading.
What was
The question is, what contemporary texts now demand a deconstructionist scrutiny? That's the question.
I see no exception. Everything, every text. I mean, you mean philosophical text or journalistic text or everything? Well, everything is requires deconstruction. Not only text in the narrow sense, but everything. Deconstruction is not something that you just apply. Deconstruction is already at work, always already, as you say, always already at work within the thing to be deconstructed. When you deconstruct, you don't use a tool in order to deconstruct something. You find in the thing itself, the text itself, if you want, something already self-deconstructing. So, and nothing can escape this in terms of politics, of philosophy, everyday life. So I see no exception to it.
Right here.
You spoke about Heidegger, and how about Sartre? Did you have a relationship with him?
What kind of relationship? No, obviously, you may imagine that I've read him already when I was very young. Okay, and he was, when I was a student, one of the major philosophers when I was a young student. I never met him. If this is what you mean by your question, I read him intensely when I was young. Then I departed from him. I realized he was not a strong philosopher. Then I came back, and I'm now more interested in him than I was, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago. It's complicated, but it's still a question for me how this man, who is not a very powerful philosopher, not a very good writer either, who made so many mistakes in politics and so on and so forth, who made mistakes all the time, nevertheless is an admirable, is an admired figure in France. He's the most popular figure in France. Very popular. When he was buried, by the way, there are millions of people on the street, okay? Which is an achievement for a philosopher. So that's my question. I have a lot of sympathy and respect for his sense of justice, for his even if he was wrong and he missed many points in politics, the inspiration of his moves were generous, and I love that. Okay, but no real. I think I don't owe him anything in philosophy, if this is what you mean. But I admire the generosity of ethical and political generosity of the man.
Over here.
How did you get Mr. Sakamoto involved in the film?
The question is, how did Ryuichi get involved in the film? We heard Sakamoto's work, and it seemed like the right thing to do, but we had no connections or contacts to him, and I just went on the website. It's sort of a funny story. And his website's fascinating. It's completely, it seems like channeling Jacques' work. It's just letters floating around, and you have no idea what you're clicking on. Absolutely no, and you click on a letter, and then, poems come up or something. So I'm sort of, floundering in this website thinking, well, this is appropriate. And so I called the website designer, and I said, here's who I am. I want to reach Ryuichi, and here's what I'm doing. And he said, all right, I'll put in a call for you. And I thought, well, that's that. But sure enough, they called. And we sent them rough cuts. And Ryuichi said, yeah, I'll do it. And I was like, oh, God, now I have to tell him we have no money. Because by this time I'd done some research, and he's like $1 million plus a picture. So I called him in and said, well, this is great, and we'd love to work with you, but, we don't have money. And he said, I figured that out. You guys don't even have stationery. So, it was just incredibly. And then at that point he said, did you know that Ryuichi has worked with Jacques' text? And he thought that we knew that, and that's why we had approached him, and I didn't. And evidently, Ryuichi had written an opera a few years before in which he pulled some of your work. I sent you that.
Know that.
Yeah. Well, he owes you money. So they thought it was just happenstance and caprice, but lucky caprice, and we're very grateful.
We have time for just 2 more questions. You?
What kind of music do you listen to, and why do you listen to it?
I usually don't answer such questions. What would that mean? I love jazz and Bach and Mozart, and you shouldn't ask such a question. I love music. I'm not competent. I'm not I have no real musical culture. In the professional sense. But I love music, and I listen to music all the time. And, well, free jazz, or Bach or Mozart.
Next, over here.
Hi, Mr. Derrida. How do you feel about the term deconstruction being so bandied about? Does it amuse you, irritate you to hear it used by people who probably don't know what it means?
Yeah. Well, I have, let's say, as you say, mixed feelings. On the one hand, I'm happy that it happened, that the word circulates. I try to understand why. There must be something, some reason, some serious reason why it becomes fashionable. And I try to understand why it becomes fashionable. And it's not just a fashion. Even if the people don't know what it should mean, seriously, philosophically, they understand something in deconstruction, and that's it's not meaningless. And so I'm amused, a little anxious, but interested, and finally not unhappy.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you all for coming tonight.